Hello and welcome back to Click English, everyone. Today's video is part 2 of analyzing line charts. So in this video again I will be analyzing a couple of line charts and I'll be telling you on what is the best approach to take when you are, and I'll be telling you what you can do and what approach you should take whenever you get a question which is a line chart. So now I'm not going to be going into too much details because I've already explained a few bits in the part 1 of this video. So if you want, you can check that out. And if you want even more details on how to write introductions and overview, you can check my other previous videos. So when you are watching this video, what you need to do is whenever there is a question on the screen, you need to pause the video and you need to think and try to find the best approach. What according to you will be the best strategy, what you should keep in mind when you will attempt an answer for that particular question. So just pause the video, look at the question, try to analyze it, and then I will analyze it, of course, and you can check whether your analysis is correct or not, and if not, then what you should be doing in order to ensure a score of 8 bands and above, right? So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so now since we are analyzing IELTS Writing Task 1, then we should probably look at what are the parameters which affect your score. Now this is something which I've already covered in my previous video, so I'm not going to be going through, so I'm not going to cover this a lot. I'm just quickly going through highlight what you really need to do in order to score 8 bands. If you need more information, you can look at my previous videos. So in this case, we are only going to look at task achievement and coherence and cohesion because we are learning on how to analyze line charts. We're not going to look at vocabulary, which is lexical resource, or grammatical range and accuracy, because to be honest, this is something which you really need to do on your own. You need to have good vocabulary skills and you need to use correct grammar structures. And this is something which I'm not going to cover in this YouTube video. Here we are covering how to get 8 bands in terms of task achievement and coherence and cohesion. So you need to cover all requirements of the task sufficiently and you need to highlight and illustrate key features. Now what are the key features? I will explain that shortly, and you also need to sequence information and ideas logically. So this is really important, and you also have to create paragraphs appropriately. Now how to do all this, I'm just going to cover quickly. Now let's say this is the question which you get. So in this question it says that the line graph below provides information about incomes of 4 restaurants in a city in 2010. So here are 4 restaurants, namely Delicacy, Evening Paradise, Grand Fiesta and Spicy Fortune, and the line graph shows the income and how it's changed throughout the year from January to December. Now if you remember, it says in 8 band category in terms of task response that you need to highlight key features. That means you just need to understand what are the important things which are happening in this line graph. So a lot of people get confused because there are so many things happening with the lines and they feel that there are too many things which they need to highlight, and that is incorrect because that's not what you need to do. You just need to highlight the important details. So there are a few important details which you need to understand here. The first thing is that we can clearly see that this restaurant, which is highlighted in purple, which is a Spicy Fortune, was the highest earner, right? Now the income fluctuated, but it remained the highest earner till October, after which its income rapidly declined. So this is a key feature which you need to highlight. In terms of other restaurants, we can see that all of the other 3 increased. These 2 especially increased quite dramatically and significantly by the end of the year, especially Evening Paradise. So again, this is a key feature. Grand Fiesta, the green one, saw a period of decline, but afterwards it started gradually increasing. So the 3, Delicacy, Evening Paradise and Grand Fiesta, they are increasing, and because these 3 are increasing, I will create a group I'll create a group of these three and explain them together, and while I'll explain Spicy Fortune separately. Now, so you will highlight all this detail in your overview paragraph. Now, what is an overview paragraph? I have already covered in my previous videos. Again, I would recommend that you watch those. Now, overview paragraph is really important because it gives an idea to the reader on what to expect in the following paragraphs, especially in the main body paragraph. So in this case, the things which you will highlight is that Spicy Fortune was the highest earner, then it declined suddenly, and while these three increased, especially this one, Delicacy and Evening Paradise, they increased significantly, right? So this will be your overview paragraph. Now, when it comes to your main body paragraph or your body paragraph, however you call it, you will have to explain the figures. That is the start point, which is $160,000, and the end figures in this case, which is almost about $40,000, right? So in main body paragraphs you have to write the figures, but again write only the important figures. So you can say, now a lot of people make this mistake that they think that since it is increasing and decreasing and fluctuating so much, so they need to write these figures as well. Now this would be an incorrect approach, because first of all you only have to write 150 words. So your introduction paragraph and your overview already, if you write these two, you should already be writing around about 50 to 70 words, maybe even 80 words, if not more. So you do not have a lot of words left, and also you need to utilize your time properly. You cannot be writing 250 or 300 words for only task one, because that's not what is asked of you. So you should mention that the starting point, in this case you can say that Spicy Fortune was the largest earner in the beginning of the year, and it earned about $160,000 in January, and its earning fluctuated throughout the year, but even by October it was still the highest earner at about $140,000. But after that, the earnings or the income dramatically plummeted. So plummet, if you don't know the meaning of the word, it means dramatically decreasing. So the earnings plummeted, or you can just simply say considerably or dramatically decreased or sharply fell, and they fell down all the way down to $40,000 by the end of the year. However, so this would be one paragraph where you're explaining just Spicy Fortune, and then you can move on to another body paragraph where you're explaining these three, where you will say that, however, in terms of earnings of Evening Paradise and Delicacy, the earnings were quite low in the beginning of the year at $50,000 and $30,000 respectively, but then they started increasing, and from October onwards they skyrocketed or sharply inclined, and they reached these and these figures. And then you can move on to explain Grand Fiesta. So that's probably it, what you need to do in this question. That's how you will analyze it. It should not take you more than 5 minutes to do all this, to make all the mental notes, and then you should just give it language, and that's about it. So if you do this, then you are ensuring that at least in terms of task response and coherence and cohesion, you are getting 8 bands, which is 50% of your score. And if you are getting 8 bands in these two, then all you need to do is just ensure that you're writing the correct vocabulary and you're using decent grammar structures, and all of this should ensure a very high score. Okay, so let's have a look at the next question. And this looks pretty easy. I mean, it doesn't look very challenging. So the question here says that the graph below shows radio and television audience throughout the day in 1992. So Yeah, I mean, this is not a very complex question. As you can see, there is a line which is depicting television viewers, and then there's another one which shows people listening to radio. So I mean, as you can see here, that it's quite obvious that we can see that people listening to radio are there are more number of people listening to radio in the earlier part of the day, and people watching television are more active in the later part of the day. Uh, so opposite trends, and yeah, that's something which you should really point out in your overview before you write your main body. So that's important, and this is something which you need to spot. Now, how to write the main body? Well, all you need to do is just pick out the important details, and that's it, because it's quite difficult to make groups. I mean, that's not possible. I mean, there are not multiple lines where you can look for similar trends and group them together and then write. So here all you need to do is just highlight the important things or important features. So if we look at the question closely, we can see that when it comes to people listening to radio, the number was about almost about 7 to 8% in the early part of the day, about around 6 a.m. But then the number of people listening to radio dramatically climbed, and yeah, and the number went up to almost about 25%. So this was the peak at about 8 a.m. But then afterwards, the number of listeners listening to radio considerably or gradually decreased. And by midnight and later, about 2 a.m. or 4 a.m., very less people, almost negligible. In contrast, the viewership for television was quite low in the early part of the day. So not a lot of people were watching television, or maybe about 5% people were watching television in morning. But the viewership starts to increase after 12 noon. So after 12 noon, the number of people watching television really increased, and by 8 o'clock this number reached its peak, and it was almost about, well, almost 45% of people were watching television at about 8 o'clock in December 1992 in UK. And afterwards, after this, the viewership really sinks, or falls down drastically, and by midnight the number goes down by almost about 10%, and then it's just almost zero. So that's about it. So all you need to do is just divide the line into 2 or 3 parts. So for radio, these are the important parts, and for television, these are the important areas which you need to highlight. And that's about it. That's so pretty easy, pretty straightforward, nothing really complex. Right, so that was the analysis of IELTS line charts. Stay tuned, because I'm going to be releasing part 3 and 4 of further analysis of line charts, and in the end you will have around 20 questions which we've analyzed together. And by the end of all these 20 questions, you should be comfortable enough when you see a question which is a line chart, and you should be able to get a good score, and you should know the correct strategy and the correct approach when addressing this sort of question. All right, so keep on practicing and stay tuned for the next part of the video. Bye bye.